Welcome back to 21 Grams. This isn't a podcast about having it all figured out. It's a space we come when we're tired of pretending. Think of this like a conversation you have late at night with someone who knows you well enough to tell you the truth, but also cares enough not to sugarcoat it. I've been sitting with the question lately, and it's not a question to judge others or judge myself, but simply to understand some stuff. How many of my problems came from low quality decisions? How many of my problems came from low quality decisions? Not reckless ones, just the low quality decisions. The kind you make when you're exhausted, when you're emotionally drained, when you're just trying to get through the day without falling apart. Because think about it, nobody wakes up and says, let me mess my life up today. Let me make a bad decision today. But a lot of us, we wake up tired, and tired people, well, I think we tend to make short term choices. And here's the part that hit me while I was thinking about how many of my problems came from low quality decisions. Most of the weight that we carry, it didn't come from one big mistake. It came from a lot of small decisions we made while we were running on empty. And that's what this episode is about. It's not to lay any blame or shame, just an honest look at how we got here and what it may look like to choose a little better starting now. If this feels personal, it's because I'm talking to you the same way I talk to myself. So let's get into it. What is a low quality decision? Let me explain by Let me explain what I mean by saying low quality decision because I'm not talking about anything dramatic or anything crazy. A low quality decision isn't loud and it doesn't come with alarms or red flags. It's quiet, it feels reasonable, and it usually shows up when you're tired enough to stop asking follow up questions. Here's the simplest way I can put it: a low quality decision is the choice you make to get relief right now, even if you know it's going to cost you more later. But it's not because you don't care, and it's not because you don't know any better. I believe it's simply because you don't have the energy to hold long view. Let's compare it to, let's say, a gas tank. Think about driving when your gas tank is low. You don't start thinking about where you're going next week. You're just watching that needle, see how low it's going to get. When you're running on empty, every decision becomes about survival. Can I make it to the next exit? Is there a gas station close by? What's the fastest way to not get stranded? And if you think about it, that's how decisions work when we're emotionally depleted. You're not thinking, is this the best choice for my future? You're thinking, what helps me get through tonight, through this very moment? Low quality decisions aren't made by careless people, they're made by tired people. And tired people, they're not stupid, they just focused on making it to the next mile. Let me make this real. Imagine it's been a long week. Work has been heavy, life feels expensive, you're mentally done, and then you open your banking app, not because you want to plan anything, but because you're stressed and avoiding something else. You already know that the money's tight. You already know this isn't the smartest moment, but you want to buy something. And then you think, I deserve this. It's not that much. I'll figure it out later. There's a bunch of plans now: paying for, pay later, buy now, pay later. So you swipe that card or you hit buy now and you tell yourself the next check is going to fix all of this. And at that moment, it works. You get instant gratification. You feel better, your mind gets quiet. But that's what makes it dangerous because the relief, The relief is real, but it's only temporary. And later, it's going to show up as stress, guilt, and another problem added to the pile. That wasn't a bad decision. It wasn't reckless. It was a low quality decision made in a depleted state of mind. Now, multiply that decision by weeks, months, years. That's how weight is built. That's how life weight is built. Another way we can look at it is in relationships. Low quality decisions show up in relationships too. And I'm not talking about, oh, I shouldn't be with this person. I shouldn't be with that person. I should have never crossed paths with this one. It looks like staying in conversations that drain you, avoiding hard talks because you don't have the energy, or saying things like, it's fine when you're not, just to keep the peace. Not because you're afraid of truth, but because you're tired of conflict. So you choose quiet discomfort over honest discomfort. And again, it works in a moment. So bad decisions or low quality decisions, they make you choose quiet discomfort over honest discomfort. But it only works for the moment. But it only works until it doesn't. Low quality decisions usually solve a short term problem. Low quality decisions usually solve a short term problem by creating a long term one. And the reason we don't notice it right away is because the cost doesn't show up immediately. It shows up slowly over time, quiet. That's what we're talking about here, right? Not mistakes, not failures, just moments where you made a low quality decision. And to touch base on how these low quality decisions come up or how they solve short term problems by creating long term ones, let's think about these Klarna, OnePay, Affirm. Let's think about those short term reliefs to buy something, right? You want to buy something and it costs $1,000. Well, you don't have $1,000 today, but you have been approved for, let's say, Klarna, and you could pay it in 4 installments. In your mind, you're starting to think it's easier for me to spend 250 than it is to spend $1,000 at once. But then it shows up slowly, right? 250 this week, 250 in the next few weeks. Now it becomes a constant bill. It wasn't a bad decision that you made. It was just a low quality one because you wanted instant gratification. Like I said, it's not a mistake, it's not a failure. It was just a bad decision, a low quality decision. And this is usually the moment where people get hard on themselves. This is where we say things like, why do I keep doing this? Why don't I learn? Why am I like this? I don't think those are the right questions because most of the time, the issue isn't character, it's condition. We don't make low quality decisions because we don't care. We make them because something in us is depleted. And when you're depleted, your world gets smaller, your thinking gets shorter, your patience just disappears. You stop asking things, right? You stop asking things that make sense. You stop asking what's best for me long term. And you replace that with what helps me survive right now? What gets me what I want right now? What's the easiest way for me to get what I want right now? And it's not just in material things, it can be in relationships, it can be in what you're going to wear, where you're going, what you're going to do. So before we talk about changing these decisions, right? Let's talk about what state we're in when we're making them. Because you can't expect high quality choices from someone who's running on fumes, right? If you're running on fumes, or what I mean by fumes is you're tired, you're mentally stressed, things haven't been going your way. You need something to give you an energy boost, an instant gratification. You're looking for that dopamine. You're looking for something that will make you feel good. So let's go there, right? This is what I want to talk about next. The conditions that quietly push us towards choices that cost us more than we realize. Because these decisions, we're conditioned to think like that. Everything is so much easier to do, everything is kind of laid out for us to make it easy to fall for these traps, right? Of making these low quality decisions. But let's talk about how small decisions quietly build big consequences. Because this is where things get uncomfortable now. Because most of us aren't dealing with the aftermath of one bad moment. We're dealing with the result of repeated small compromises. We aren't dealing with the aftermath of one bad moment. We're dealing with the result of repeated small compromises. Low quality decisions don't usually blow things up. What they do is they slowly rearrange your life. And that's what makes them dangerous, right? Because they don't feel urgent, they don't demand attention, they just keep collecting interest. And one day you look around and think, how did I end up here? How did I end up here? Let's talk about something. Let's say a job you knew wasn't right anymore, right? You have a job and you outgrew it. At first, you stayed because it made sense, right? The money was decent, the timing was right, you had responsibilities, it felt like stability. That wasn't a bad decision, that was practical. But then weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and every day you stayed a little longer than you should have, something small chipped away. You stopped speaking up, you lowered your expectations, you told yourself, this is just how it works. You didn't quit your life, you just stopped expanding it. The job you knew wasn't right anymore. Let's think about this. Some of us know when the time is right to walk away from whatever job it is that we have. But we don't leave right away, right? We start thinking, man, this is stable. This is what responsibility looks like. This is what stability looks like. So that one decision, that low quality decision to say, you know what, let me stay in my comfort zone and stay, doesn't necessarily turn into a bad decision. It was a practical one, right? But then what comes after that? It's another decision to stay. Now you're stacking up all these decisions that I did want to leave, but I didn't. I did want to start something new, but I didn't. I did believe I could do something, but I'm afraid to do it. So you start making low quality decisions to stay, right? To stay in that environment, to stay in that job, to stay in that surrounding, to stay in that relationship because it feels familiar. You don't want to break. You don't want to just walk away from something because you put that mental block there, right? And every day that you stayed a little longer, you start chipping away at something, right? You stop speaking up and you, you realize that you didn't quit your life. You just stop expanding it. What I mean by that is you stop you stop being responsible for your own well-being, right? Because the effects start to show up. What do I mean by these effects? Well, you're more irritable, both at home, at work, with your friends, with those around you. You get tired even on your days off. You need distractions just to decompress sometimes. You start resorting to things to make yourself feel better by yourself, right? Sunday nights feel heavy for no clear reason. We know Monday's coming up, but Sunday we're already thinking about, man, I made this decision to stay. I made this decision to keep going where I'm at, and tomorrow's Monday and I'm already regretting it. But then, all in all, nothing dramatic happens, right? There's no explosion, there's no breaking point. It's just a slow leak. And here's the part that people miss: the job wasn't just costing you time, it's costing you energy, creativity, self trust. That's the compound effect, right? Low quality decisions don't usually hurt you immediately, they hurt you eventually. But by then, the cost is higher because now you're not just changing a situation, you're undoing a pattern. I use the job as an example, but we can change that to the way we manage our finances, the way we manage our relationships, the way we raise our kids, the way we collect things. The It's an infinite amount of stuff that we can relate to it. Besides the low quality decisions, right? We already spoke about how making these low quality decisions, they don't affect us immediately, but they hurt us eventually. And then the cost is higher. But then there's some layers that get added to it, right? I call it the lie of "I'll fix it later." "I'll fix it later" is one of those expensive sentences we tell ourselves. Well, why do we say things like that? I think it's because later feels safe. Later feels responsible. Like, hey, between now and then, I'm going to handle that because between now and then, I will have matured. I will have a better understanding. I will be in a better position. But later also gives small problems time to grow roots. So that little one bad decision you made maybe was to get that new bag. Now that small problem has roots. Now you're incurring interest. Now you have more cost. Now it's more expensive. Debt grows interest. Resentment hardens. And then after all of that, dissatisfaction settles in. Debt grows interest. Resentment hardens. And dissatisfaction settles in. And the longer something goes unaddressed, the more courage it takes to face it. The longer something goes unaddressed, the more courage it takes. That's why change feels so heavy when we finally consider it, right? You're not changing one thing, you're changing everything that one thing touched. So, that one low quality decision, let's say staying in a relationship, if that's your low quality decision, now you have an emotional attachment to somebody, right? Now, let's say you started a family. Let's say that you're so vested in someone that you can't function or you don't feel there's an exit for you without hurting others. That's what I mean by this starts to compound and grow interest and resentment because you start thinking, man, I made this decision to be with one person in this season of my life. But now that I'm in this season, I no longer want that. Now I don't have to just change my decisions, I have to change everything that that decision touched. Whether that's I bought a house with someone, now I bought a car, I share an account with someone, or I stayed in this job, now I got promoted in this job, now I have more responsibilities in this job. Now I have this kid is growing, this kid is out of daycare, now they go to school, then they go to college. It's a never ending cycle, right? So let's start raising the bar on decisions that we make. Let's stop making decisions based on instant gratification. I think that's the easiest way to put it. Because let's think about this. Most of the stress we're dealing with right now isn't because life hit us hard. It's because we let things slide for too long. We let these decisions carry out for too long. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to bring this up because this hurts me or I'm not ready to have this conversation. And that's not judgment, that's being honest. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, it might not be because you're failing. It might be because you've been paying the price of the small decisions you made while you were tired, and now the bill is due. You made these decisions to stay, to go, to keep, to start something, but now that bill is due, and that bill's coming with interest. Every decision you made, every decision that led you to where you are, just compounded. One bad decision to, let's use the example of being in a relationship. You decided you wanted to be with this person and you did everything in your power to be with this person and you made the decision and you don't realize it's a low quality decision because you made that decision based on current feelings, right? Now, sometime down the line, you start noticing somebody's bad habits. You don't like this bad habit. You don't like that they don't make the bed. You don't like that they leave dishes everywhere. Those are all the result of that one bad or low quality decision you made based on immediate gratification. So what I'm trying to get at is instead of making a decision, a yes or a no, let's start with maybes. Maybe this can work. Let me think about it a little longer. Maybe I do need this vacation. Let me see how my finances can pay for it. Maybe I do need to buy this new item. Maybe I do need to date this person. Maybe I do need to go somewhere, start a business, start a new job. But let's sit with it long enough. So instead of making a low quality decision, we make a more educated decision, right? Because when you start feeling overwhelmed, it might not be because you're failing. It might be because you've been paying the price of small decisions you made while you were tired or uninformed or just in search of immediate gratification, dopamine. But now, after all is said and done, the bill is due. But here's the quiet power in that realization, right? If small choices built this life you're living right now, then small choices, they can start to change it. And it won't be overnight, won't be dramatic, it won't be coming with explosives and big announcements. It'll be deliberately. Before we get to that, before we get to see those small changes start to happen with us with these small choices that we're going to start making better, we got to ask ourselves, why do we repeat the same low quality decision? Why do we repeat the same low quality decision? Here's the part most people don't want to admit. And it's not because it's ugly, but because it's true. We don't repeat low quality decisions because we don't know any better. We repeat them because they're familiar. And familiar has a strange kind of gravity. Think about it as your shoes, worn in shoes, right? Think about an old pair of shoes that you really like. They're not the best shoes. They may not be the best shoes you've ever owned. They might not even be comfortable anymore. But what they are is they're broken into. They don't surprise you. You know exactly how they fit, where they rub, where they don't, how to tie them, not tie them. You know everything about this shoe. So even when you buy a new pair, a better pair of shoes, you still find yourself reaching for the old ones because new shoes take time to adjust. They might hurt at first, they might not be broken in. They ask something of you. They ask to be worn, they ask to be broken in, they ask to be used enough for you to feel comfortable in them. But those old shoes, they're already broken in, they're comfortable, and they may not even be comfortable, but they're familiar. That's how patterns work. Low quality decisions, they're like worn shoes. They may be holding you back, but they don't challenge you at all. They're just there. They're familiar, so you pick them up. You want to just go for a walk or run some errands. You're going to pick the most comfortable shoes you can think of, and most of the times they're probably going to be those old ones. Another way to think about this is, let's say Imagine listening to a radio station that's full of static. The sound isn't clear, but you still make out what the music is. You still make out what the message is. At first, the static is annoying, right? But over time, your brain adjusts to it. Eventually, silence feels louder than the noise. So when clarity shows up, when things get quiet, it feels uncomfortable. That's why people return to chaos. The static is gone, but your brain just adjusts slightly to block the static and be able to hear the sound that you're looking for, the music, the message, the host talking. But then if it gets quiet, it feels uncomfortable. You got the static, and within that static of listening to the radio station, you're trying to fish out that sound of that song or whatever message the host is trying to say. And after the static, the sound, the noise, when that gets quiet, it feels uncomfortable. That's why people return to chaos. That's why they revisit unhealthy dynamics. That's why they repeat choices they swore they were done with. Not because chaos feels good, but because it feels known. Think about that. How many times have you made a decision, not because the decision feels good, but because it feels known, it feels familiar, feels comfortable, it feels like an old pair of shoes, right? Our nervous system doesn't prioritize happiness, it prioritizes predictability. Our nervous system asks, is this familiar? Can I survive this? Do I know how this ends? Kind of like having control, right? Growth doesn't answer those questions clearly. Change introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like danger even when it isn't. So we stay, we repeat, we rationalize, we keep making those low quality decisions because staying with what we know feels safer than stepping into something we don't yet trust ourselves to handle. Think about that. Staying with what we know feels safer than stepping into something we don't yet ourselves to handle. We don't trust it yet. So sometimes we choose what hurts us because it's the pain we already learned how to carry. And it's not a pain we're going to be dealing with right now. That low quality decision is not going to hurt us today. It's going to actually do the opposite. It's going to bring us happiness. It's going to give us instant gratification. It's going to help us release dopamine. It's going to be great right now. It's going to hurt us eventually, somewhere down the line, because that's the pain that we already learned to carry. I'll deal with what makes me happy right now, even though I clearly know somewhere down the line, I'm going to pay for this. This is not going to probably end good. I'm going to have to make a lot of adjustments later, but I want to do this right now. I want to get this right now. So we do it. There's one more reason why repetition is so powerful. Over time, patterns turn into identity, right? One of our previous episodes, we spoke about how our brain responds to repetitions, to patterns. Low quality decisions are just that. They're patterns. They're patterns that we condition ourselves to use in order to, what's the word I'm looking for? In order to do what it is that we want to do now, in order to justify what it is that we want, what we want to do. Low quality decisions, they help us get whatever it is that we want right now. And over time, patterns, they turn into identity. It becomes who you are. You're going to make low quality decisions 2 years from now, 5 years from now, tomorrow, next week. And you're going to start making them on things that are truly important, like investing in 401, like paying your taxes, like maturing, like buying a good car instead of buying an affordable car because it feels right now. Long term, you know that car's going to break down. You have no warranty. You have nothing. You don't make the decision to buy a new car because, well, that's too hard to do right now. I'm going to stick to this. I'm gonna make this low quality decision to get this car right now because it's what fits, but then you pay for it later, right? That's repetition. That's a pattern. You stop saying things like, this is something I'm dealing with, right? You start saying, I'm sorry, you stop saying things like, this is something I'm dealing with, and you start saying, well, this is just who I am. This is just who I become. I'm bad with money. I always end up here. I can't seem to change. But that's not identity. That's just familiarity. That's just low quality decisions wearing a name tag. And the moment you see that distinction, something shifts because what's familiar can be unlearned. Those bad, low quality decisions, they can be turned around. But it's what we practice to replace that with, right? Are we going to practice higher quality decisions? How are we going to get to that point mentally? Slowly, but on purpose, right? We're going to start raising the quality without becoming someone else. Here's what I want to say, or what I want to be really clear about. Raising the quality of your decision does not mean becoming perfect. It doesn't mean waking up tomorrow as a different person. And it definitely doesn't mean punishing yourself for your past, punishing yourself for the low quality decisions that you've already made. It means slowing down just enough to stop making decisions from exhaustion, from um, mental depletion, from making decisions in a instant gratification expecting kind of way. Because most of us don't need more discipline. Most of us don't need more discipline. We need more space between the feeling of, can I make this decision better? Can I hold myself accountable to make better decisions? More space between that feeling and the choice. More space between feeling that I'm going to start making the right decisions. I'm going to start making the right choices. More room to breathe before we respond. Think about that car we was just driving, the one that was running out of gas. When you're drifting out of your lane, you don't yank the steering wheel, right? When you're driving tired and, well, not even tired. Let's just say you kind of dozed off for a second. You got too caught up into the song you was listening to or the message in the latest podcast you was listening to, and your car starts to drift. Do you just yank the steering wheel to get back into the center? No. You make small corrections, just enough to get back on track. And that's what I want you guys to understand. Coming back from making low quality decisions just doesn't look like making perfect ones from here on out. It's slowly doing just enough to make small corrections just to get back on track. That's how change actually works. It's not a hard turn, it's not a dramatic overhaul, just small intentional adjustments made consistently. Most people crash because they overcorrect. They promise everything will change overnight. Nothing changes overnight. But what's sustainable change? Sustainable change happens with steady hands, steady intentions, consistency. You don't fix your life by making perfect decisions, you fix it by making slightly better ones more often. You don't fix your life by making perfect decisions, you fix it by making slightly better ones more often. That's what raising the quality actually looks like. Raising the quality of your decisions, it might sound like, let me sleep in tonight. I don't need to decide anything right now. I don't need to decide something tonight. This feels familiar, not healthy. I'm tired. This isn't the moment. I'll get back to this. Let me do some more research about it. It might mean resting before responding, pausing before spending, creating space before committing. It may look like working on yourself, learning new patterns, learning new ways of thinking, new ways of responding to stuff, learning how to say no. when you're not ready. Not because you're afraid, but because you respect yourself enough to choose from a better state. You want to make sure when we start making decisions moving forward, we're making these decisions in a better state of mind, right? Because the shift matters. Here's a quiet shift that changes everything. When you stop asking, what do I feel like doing right now? And you replace it with, what decision will support me tomorrow? What I'm looking for right now, is this going to help me tomorrow? Is this going to support who I want to become? Is this going to support who I want to be? Is this going to keep me present? Is this going to be intentional for me to get to where I want to be at? That question alone raises the quality. Not every time and not perfectly, but just enough, right? Here's the part I don't want you to miss. You don't need to go back and fix every decision you ever made. You don't need to go back and fix every decision you ever made. You don't need to relive the past. You just need to make the next decision from a better place. That's it. One small correction, and steady, eyes forward. There's still time to choose differently. Okay? If this episode stirred something in you, if it made you think about choices you wish you handled differently, if you want to hear this clearly, pay attention to this. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not too far gone. You're becoming aware. And awareness is where change actually begins. Because now you know you've already made low quality decisions. You were present for it. You were there. You acknowledged it. Now you're aware. Now we can start to change them. Most people never stop long enough to connect the dots. They stay busy, they stay distracted, they keep repeating the patterns without ever naming them. But not you. You're aware now. We are aware. You sat with it. You looked at it honestly. That already tells me something about you. We're 37 minutes into this episode, and if you're still here, thank you. That in itself lets me know that something about this episode touched you and it stirred something in you. Sit with it. Because I know you're capable of choosing differently. I had to believe that myself before I started choosing differently. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. Here's something I really want you to hold on to. It may sound like I'm repeating myself, but I want you to get this message. You don't need to fix your whole life. You don't need to undo every low quality decision you've ever made. You just need to raise the quality of the next one, the next conversation, the next purchase, the next yes, the next no, the next maybe. Because every better choice, no matter how small, lightens the load just a little bit. And over time, that weight you've been carrying quietly, it starts to lift. So if you're listening to this late at night, or on a drive, or you're in that in between space where life finally slows down, take a breath because you're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. And experience is powerful when you stop fighting it and start learning from it. I'm glad you were here today. I'm glad you're taking this deeply. I'm glad you're thinking about this. And I believe truly that you're capable of more than you've been giving yourself credit for. This is 21 grams. Thank you for being with me. And like always, I'll be here for the next conversation.